With that sacred reminder, that beautiful song, that wondrous love is in us, we celebrate Easter morning together today. It's so nice to look out on all of you. You can look around and see one another here and celebrate the joy that we have in coming together. I'd like to have you say after me these few words this morning. Spirit is alive. Spirit is alive. Spirit is in me. Spirit is in me. Spirit is alive. Spirit is alive. And Spirit sets me free. And Spirit sets me free. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We could be a gospel church. Easter. Oh. Well, let's create our sacred space together even a little bit more by feeling your hips on your chair and settling in and taking a deep breath. And let's imagine, with your eyes closed, if you will, that there is above us angels. Or we could call them the hosts of heaven, or we could call them our ancestors. And they are letting down around us a beautiful blue silk canopy. This blue silk is wafting down around us, behind us, around us. And within this beautiful container, this sanctuary, let us invoke Eternal Spirit. Eternal Spirit, you are so alive in the springtime all around us, throwing out these tiny tendrils that are seeking support, sprouting thin twigs that reach for the bright golden sun. And underground there are these tubers seeking water in dark earthy soil, and the blossoms of the cherry and the plum bursting forth. Oh, Spirit of life, you are in and amongst us this Easter morning. We've gathered here this morning to celebrate the triumph of life over death. Maybe the body can be killed, but the spirit cannot be quenched. The spirit is old and strong, and she lives on and on. The body, we celebrate her. We remember that sometimes we have pain and suffering and death, but that these are not the end of the story. Sometimes we've got to go through scary underground passageways towards more abundant life. We've got to move through like the seeds under the earth, crawling through until we hit the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is Easter morning. This is what we're celebrating. We renew our faith this morning in the inherent dignity of spirit within all of humanity. May we remember the eternal truth spun into the whole web of life, that our wounds can become sacred, incarnational teachings, wisdom embedded in our own stories of resurrection. We are here to live out a whole and holy way. So let's celebrate together this morning. The one who never gives up, even in the darkest night of winter. Let's celebrate our blue-green planet Earth. She resurrects anew each spring. Hallelujah. We are here to live in a whole and holy way on planet Earth. So let's sing together this favorite song of ours, Holy, Holy Way.
Holy, holy way. That's always.
I want you for a minute to remember with me Easter's gone past in your life. What are some of your fond memories of Easters that you've had? Maybe you're of Jewish tradition and you've celebrated Passover through the years too. What are some of your wonderful memories of Passover? Just off the bunny.
My uncle not only talking about the oppression of the Jews, but the oppression of people all over as Seder.
Candles and sunrise services. Easter egg hunts.
Have a miniature tea party.
Miniature tea party.
Dressing up in our Easter bells.
Yes, Easter fest, Easter dresses, Easter hats, white gloves. Easter bonnets. Easter bonnets.
A golden egg.
Well, it's interesting because as you hear yourself saying these memories of Easter, you can hear in it that there has always been a blend of the pagan and the Christian. No matter how much, more fundamental Christian churches might try to deny it, the goddess Eostar, and the ancient earth-based, creation-centered spiritual ways have never been forgotten and have been coming through all the centuries and all the years in our celebrations of Easter. Easter is a time of possibilities that are beyond our wildest imagination. And I would like Nisha to come up right now and read from this wonderful book of poetry called Climbing Poetry, and it's written by these two young African-American poets who are so full of life energy, and they really give us a sense of the possibility of the next generations that are coming. So there's a poem called Possibility, and then one called this. The mic is... Read it twice.
Possibility. You are that promise. Let your rain fall down. Everything you do right now is your calling. Come undone under the weight of your breathing. That which can be taken away from you is not worth keeping. Let go of your gifts that you may receive them. Possibility is as wide as our believing.
Listen to it a second time. David White says every good poem deserves reading twice.
You are that promise. Let your rain fall down. Everything you do right now is your calling. Come undone under the weight of your breathing. That which can be taken away from you is not worth keeping. Let go of your gifts that you may receive them. Possibility is as wide as our believing.
Let's all say, aho.
Now this. Let this be the best day of your life, because it's the one you are living. Let this moment be a gift, because it's what you've been given. Live as if this were the end, because it's just the beginning. Close your eyes, open wide. Tell me, what is your vision? This. Let this be the best day of your life, because it's the one you're living. Let this moment be a gift, because it's what you've been given. Live as if this were the end, because it's just the beginning. Close your eyes, open wide. Tell me, what is your vision?
Thank you, Nisha.
Yay, Nisha!
You other young ones out there that have poetry living in you, let me know about it. Bring it forth, okay? And old ones too. And in between, ones that are like ageless. That's us. So that last line of this poem about, what is your vision as you live fully present in this day? Imagine those women that went to the tomb, they maybe had not crossed over the line into the kind of imagination of what they were about to experience. We still don't even know. It was a huge mystery. But they experienced the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. How big is our vision? How big is our vision? Let's have our next song, which is Love is the Opening Door by Elton John. I love this song. Love is the opening door. You've got the words to it there, so let's really sing our hearts out. Love is the opening door. Love is the tombstone rolled away. This is what we came here for.
The words I have to say may well be simple, but they're true. Until you give your love, there's nothing more that we can do. Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here
message that we know of Easter, that there is a love that is stronger than death. This is the message that we live here collectively at Unity in Ashland. That love is stronger than death. And here we're telling a new story of Easter. I called the title of the talk today, which I'm not going to go into yet, this is just a little prelude. The title is The Second Resurrection. Have you ever heard about a second resurrection? Well, the story of the second resurrection takes place in you, in me, in all of humanity, and on the whole planet Earth. It's talked about in the book of Revelation. It says that there's a first resurrection, and we've heard the story of that all through the years, but there's a second resurrection. And I want to talk to you today about what that second resurrection might be. Jan has a wonderful poem that gives us a clue just through talking about one of my favorite things, lilacs. Lilacs in the spring. It gives us a clue about, that there are things we might have to let go of. There's things we might have to let go of. And the beautiful flowers of spring give us that reminder. Such a short life. Such a full life. So let us hear this wonderful poem, Lilacs, by Jan.
Lilacs. A copse of lilacs not far from my house sends a muse of delight riding the air. Purple beauty and grace borne to my breath, sensed from a mile away. To them I must go. Lavender to purple, white and pink between, a sight to be seen before they are gone. Scent of April and spring's lazy days, of childhood's joy, of mother's perfume. This is the reason I love them so much. They know they are fading as they appear. Beauty so exquisite that it's almost an ache. The same fading is in us and in all. Lilacs seem to know, while we seem to not. As soon as we're seen, we're already gone. Resurrection's wisdom, hidden in plain sight, drying to faded brown clumps by fall, sleeping in winter's white, icy cold cowl, awake in the bright green spring carpet. We appear and disappear just the same. Lilacs seem to know, while we seem to not.
So lilacs are walking the spiritual path on planet Earth. And they seem to know something. We need to tune in to nature all around us. Sometimes we humans can get kind of prideful, but we need to walk in humility, right? We gather today in humility, awed by nature, awed by the stone rolled back, awed by the surprise that came, the empty tomb. And we also gather in defiance of the pain and the injustice that came before and of the pain and the injustice that will likely come again, because we gather in hope that life can begin anew over and over again. that our differences can be bridged and that the beloved community can arise at last. We gather here in faith today that the light always shines in the darkness and that the darkness cannot overcome it. We gather in wonder of the beauty we can see and the mystery of all that we can never know. This next song was written by Leonard Cohen, but the lyrics are by Donna Corso. Was it written by Leonard Cohen? Yes. And the lyrics by Donna Corso. It's one of our favorite rewrites that we've ever heard here at Unity. And I invite you to join in on singing all of it. It's really about celebrating the lilac story, the passageway that we have to walk on planet Earth all the way through to resurrection in our lives. We celebrate every part of the walk, every part of the way. The lyrics are titled The Way.
Well, their walk began with open hearts, who knew what lay ahead. Just trust the light will guide them on their way. Now the way is hard, the way is long, the way is calling them to be strong, the way is to be followed. Hallelujah, 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 Their faith was strong, but they needed proof. Would the way bring a bigger truth? Would it open their eyes to deeper meanings? Would it open wounds? Would it bring on tears? Would it make them face their deepest fears? Would it urge them to have courage? Hallelujah, hallelujah, They say that love's the only way to live our lives day by day, to have only compassion for each other, to honor precious Mother Earth, cherish her, she gave us birth, to love living beings. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sing it out. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing it out. Hallelujah, hallelujah,
On Easter, I think you can begin to feel your heart doing things. Your heart starting to open, You can feel the door maybe being rolled away in some place in your heart that you've kept closed for a long, long time. There's a vulnerability that comes in the spring. And the vulnerability is about this hope that goes beyond things that we've yet thought were possible. So in that song that we just sang, I could feel the followers of Jesus back in those early days in those words, that they doubted. They were vulnerable too. They didn't know what was happening. They were faced with being with a wonderful person who was telling them to be courageous, to believe beyond any place they'd ever believed before. And something that we celebrate here at Unity was that he said that those things that he did, these things we would do and greater than these. So they were seeing these miraculous things happen all around them, and then hearing that calling, you are to do even greater things than these. That's the calling that goes out to us. That's why I love that poem of possibility from the climbing poetry. There are possibilities in you that the world is waiting for. Our planet Earth is always evolving, birthing new possibilities. And in these times when we think about global warming and the difficulties on our Earth, big giant state of Texas-sized plastic village out there in the middle of the ocean, challenges that we've got. Easter gives us hope that Earth is always birthing new things beyond our wildest imaginations. Sometimes I've had nighttime dreams that everything changes in the snap of a finger, in the twinkling of an eye. So what are your visions? What are your images of what could possibly happen here? Let's have one more beautiful song. And this is about imagining that what is really coming on planet Earth. So as you feel into the words, the beautiful lyrics of this song, use it as a prayer of your heart to open up the possibilities of your imagining as to what is really coming on planet Earth.
I'm so grateful to be here this morning. I know I'm feeling it. I'm certain you're feeling it too. Do feel free to join in as you begin to know this. We'll be seeing Coming to Love quite a bit. And I know it's new for all of you. It's fairly new for me. And Richard just got it 2 days ago. So let's just give a hand to Richard. Is this world
come into this place right now. There are healing waters here. There are hands with soothing balm to ease your troubled days. This is a place that you can bring your wounds and your aching hearts, your scars too numb to feel, your questions and complaints, they're all welcome here. We come here together to rest a while, come out of the storms of life, and to let the warmth of this community surround you and hold you and heal you. When you feel stronger, just a bit, notice those who need you too. They're here. They're everywhere. Weep with them. Smile with them. Work with them. Let's laugh along the way and pass the cup and drink the holy fire and take it with us out into the world. You know, we are saved by one another. That's who we're saved by. Over and over again. Each other. Again and again and yet again. This is the message that we know this Easter. This is the message that we here at Unity live collectively in our consciousness, that the great mission that Jesus came to tell us about was the Christ idea, that there is this divine love, light, energy of God, of the divine in every one of us. Indeed, in every living thing. This Christ idea that you and I are one with God is so radical. It's so radical. And we have not yet really realized it. Unfortunately, this great idea was lost all too soon in the shuffle of people trying to make a religion out of who Jesus was, right? The followers, after just a couple of generations, somehow lost their way and got so oppressed that they fell back into seeing themselves as sinners and worms of the dust, as not worthy. The great idea that you are indwelt by the living Spirit of God was buried before it could change everything. Don't you know? That was a pretty tricky little plan there. And one theologian said, because of this loss, Christianity has not yet saved the world. Well, does that seem to be an arguable point, whether or not Christianity has yet saved the world? Not in our day. We are at a time when so many are disillusioned with what Christianity became, the institution of religion, that we don't even want to get anywhere near it. Yet the true message of Jesus was meant to liberate humanity from all suffering, from lack, from the myth of separation consciousness. Why are we still missing the mark? I saw a magazine ad this week that showed a young man walking down the streets of New York City, and there was a big sign that said, "Forget the church, follow Jesus." Really? Here at Unity, that's kind of what we do. We express a different side of Christ's teachings, a side that you don't often hear in mainstream religious institutions, especially today on Easter. We notice this distinction between us Unitecs and other church people. Like, for example, why is there not a cross at the front of the sanctuary? Why is Jesus on the cross never present? Because it brings people to question, what is going on here? What is different here? Imagine for a moment if you incarnated to give a magnificent lesson on earth, an absolute demonstration of the truth of the universe that seemingly could last for all time, that could break through all errors of consciousness, that could liberate everyone from the most egocentric arguments of being separate. Imagine coming here to teach that story of complete liberation, and then years later all that's left are some people talking about all your suffering. That's what gets propagated and remembered. This emphasis on human beings being sinners and needing saving, it keeps people limited and afraid, pressed down under the cloak of so much shame. Shame and then blame become our modus operandi. Whoa, I think we've gotten really off track. I remember at age 12 knowing this, that things were off track. And I was in the catechism class at our church, and I could feel as I was in the class, even though the people were well-meaning, but I could feel as they taught me all the traditions of the church, this cloak of shame coming over me. And I actually got courageous enough to refuse to join the church. I don't know how I got that courage. And so then eventually I got even more courage to come back to church and to be a minister. But I went on a long, long journey in between. Vulnerable, searching the world over, and then finally I came to Ashland and found this non-church church, which is not predicated on shame, where I can be my whole self. On Easter, I'm reminded of the Monty Python movie called The Life of Brian. You know, where the Roman guards are standing at the door and they're saying to this whole long line of people, crucifixion, first door on the right. Resurrection, first door on the left. And it was amazing how most of the people just stood there and went right down into the door on the right. But we Unitics are out that door on the left faster than you can blink an eye. Resurrection, please. Many people are finally getting free of shame these days. Yes, we are. And it's not helping the membership of traditional churches very much. So much has been revealed about this shame problem. You know, probably many of you have read the books or heard the TED Talks of Brene Brown. You know, that social worker woman who spent 6 years researching shame and writing books about it. And she said, if you took all the people that I wrote about in my shame study, I could divide them basically into two categories, two groups. Those who have a strong sense of love and belonging, and those who don't, who struggle for it. The difference, she said, the only difference was with the ones who were free from shame, that they believed they were worthy of love and belonging. That's it. That's the only difference. So this fear that we are unworthy of connection and belonging is the one thing that can keep us out of that connection. As she studied these people who believed they were worthy of connection, she came to call them wholehearted people. Wholehearted people. She wanted to research what they had in common, and she found out this. What wholehearted people had in common was a sense of courage. Now we've heard that cur, the root from the Latin, means heart. And she translates courage to mean to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. To tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. Because wholehearted people have the courage to be imperfect. You know, we don't have to tell our story in a way that makes us look perfect. Wholehearted people have the compassion to be kind to ourselves for all that we've been through, and their understanding of others, therefore. And wholehearted people had real connections as a result of their being authentic and vulnerable. They were willing to let go of what they thought they should be to discover who they really were in any particular moment. So what it came down to is that the wholehearted people fully embraced their vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable was also what made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being easy, but just that it was necessary. So vulnerability doesn't make us comfortable, but we have to have the willingness to feel deeply. For example, if you're going to love and invest in a relationship, you never really know the way it's going to work out, right? You just have to put your heart into it. You've got to be willing to let go of certainty, to live out the questions. These wholehearted people found the willingness, for example, to breathe through waiting for a call from the doctor about the mammogram and not just numb out. So many times in our culture we get messages that it's better to numb out, that it's better to take this or that and ease everything off. I'm not saying that, in certain moments of extreme pain it isn't great that we have doctors and medicines and everything. It is wonderful. But wholehearted people said that really feeling the vulnerabilities was fundamental to being themselves. So if we're blocking things out, how can we really know who we really are? Wholehearted people are courageously speaking out everywhere these days, right out of our vulnerability, speaking the truth to the powers that be, aren't we? We're speaking the truth like those Native American women who have founded the organization Idle No More and who marched on Wall Street, 100,000 strong. Like the black and white allies who are saying Black Lives Matter. It takes a lot of feeling of what's been going on and the vulnerability of that to be proclaiming that. And like the millions of Americans, straight and gay, who pushed on through all the shaming of GLBT folks, all the way on to the passing by the Supreme Court of the ruling in favor of gay marriage. We have some big, hopeful things happening on planet Earth. Really big, hopeful things. In theology school back in the 1980s, I got to study with many of the famous feminist theologians, and they predicted that we would be living through the end of theology as we know it. And we are. We're in it now. We're in the midst of it, And we're lucky here to be here, kind of out on the cutting edge of it, I think, Because it's more real than most people have ever imagined into what we are going into and creating right now. The veils are really dropping that have blinded us for so long, and we're coming through to the light of unconditional love and the truth of our oneness, to the truth of the fact that because of our interbeingness, or some people are calling our inter-non-attachedness, I like that, our inter-non-attachedness, we're not being attached to all of our views of things and our preferences for things. We've got this inter-unattachedness going on, and it's leading us through to the truth that we have nothing to fear. The fear-mongers don't have much of a hold on us anymore. Let me talk to you a little bit more about this. I myself have been on this journey toward this kind of realness and authenticity all my life, and a lot of times I was very afraid. But I knew I had to be myself. I knew that was all I had. So I had to risk it. I had to take the courage, and it hasn't been easy. But I want to shout out to all of us gray-haired, maybe onto white-haired folks here who lived through times when there was a lot of shame piled upon us. We have all lived through various kinds of oppressions, whether it was oppression about being a psychic and knowing what we knew, but being afraid to say it, or being a dreamer, or being a creative artist person, but who was told you had to go to business school, or, all these ways that we have lived on through the oppressions that came over us. When I started out trying to be a preacher woman way back in the 70s, the church doctrine back there said this, and this was in Time magazine in 1966, when I was 15 years old. This is what it said. Even in purely non-religious terms, homosexuality represents a misuse of the sexual faculty. It is a pathetic little second-rate substitute for reality, a pitiable flight from life. As such, it deserves no compassion. It deserves no treatment as minority martyrdom, and it deserves not to be deemed anything but a pernicious sickness. Time magazine, 1966. So here we are celebrating liberation in 2016. Liberation here at Unity. We are a community of people willing to be who we are. We've lived all the way through so much shame, and today we are not ashamed to be who we are. Whatever our particular diversities are, we can be authentic and vulnerable. We do our shadow work, We come all the way through. It's not like a cheap authenticity. We go in, we look at our stuff, we look at the ways that we've been maybe twisted or turned along the way because we had so much put upon us. And in our community of unconditional love and deep hearing of one another, we get to untwist. And we get to come back to our essence and our fullness and our brightness. And we get to start telling our stories in a victory way and not in a victim way. Can you say amen to that? We're living in this vulnerable, honest, yet hopeful community of deep caring, and that's what our human souls have been longing for. Wouldn't each one of us, given the chance, want to tell our life stories in terms of creativity and passionate love that we're here to share? The full-on story of who we really are? Rather than in terms of all the problems and woes that we've experienced? It's time now to tell our stories that way. It's time now to tell our stories that way. So back to the Easter story. We're revolutionizing the Easter story. What if we tell it in the consciousness of the one who lived the story? Then it might not look so much like a story of suffering, rather like an invitation to freedom, to a liberated identity. We know so well how to experience the limitations of humanity. We know how the cruel separation consciousness is. We know the way of the cross. We know the shame story. But it's so weird how our human minds love to keep entrenched in the drama of those stories. How much the suffering hurt. Was he really dead or not dead? How did it really happen? Maybe he didn't really die. We get all caught up in the suffering drama of the story of Jesus, and we forget to study the mind of that being, the consciousness of that one who showed such demonstration of power. So at Easter, we need to ask ourselves what was really up. What was really up then and what is really up now? We've got to look beneath all the stories that were given by our culture about what's really up. We've got an invitation to look at a story that is about high consciousness, about this being who lived here, who was in such high consciousness, immersed in the field of love moment by moment, so much so that he was invincible. So here at Unity, we don't teach that Jesus died for our sins. We don't say that. We say Jesus got killed because of separation consciousness on the planet that is so strong that people couldn't stand to see a being who was fully God in their midst and who was telling them that that's who they were too. And even though they couldn't take it and they squashed him, even though they couldn't take it and they squashed us, guess what? We're coming on through. We're rising. We are resurrected. I want to honor founders of Unity because we're standing on their shoulders too, just like the younger ones are standing on some of our shoulders. We're standing on the shoulders of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And way back on Easter Sunday in 1870, Charles Fillmore said this: "The life and death and resurrection of Jesus can be taught from two diametrically opposed standpoints. Traditional Christianity tells us that Jesus was the only Son of God, and that his death was a ritual sacrifice to save our souls. But the mystics, on the other hand, us unorthodox ones, teach that Jesus developed the power that resides in every human, and he perfected it, and it lies in the midst of every one of us. Striving to make it conscious in our consciousness is what he called us to do. One path teaches men how to die. The other teaches them how to live." So this is radical teaching even today, to follow the mystical path, to follow the path of your inner knowings, of your intuition. That's what Jesus was teaching. Fillmore goes on to say, which one are you really studying? Which path are you really studying? Are you letting yourself give in to the teachings of the dominant system? Or are you really studying this mind of the way-shower Jesus? We don't worship Jesus per se. We're studying the way that his great mind worked. knowing that it was a human brain, a human mind that got really expanded and really full of consciousness. This supreme consciousness is not in some far-off place like dead and gone with Jesus who rose and left earth. No. No. This supreme consciousness is here, right here, in you and in me, to be demonstrated now. Jesus and Buddha came and were walking the streets among the common folk. That's who they walked amongst. People like you and me, saying to us, wake up to who you are. You are the light of the world. You are a bodhisattva. You are the Christ consciousness, the Buddha mind. Know who you are. Many, many people are making new images of Jesus, and I saw one this week that was by the stained glass artist Brian Lewis, and he has an image of Jesus sitting as a Buddha, meditating. Don't you love that? Because really, that's what Jesus was definitely doing. He was learning right mindfulness and right concentration to the degree that his spirit could not be broken. He could not be forced by anything done to him to believe in separation. He couldn't be forced to believe in separation. He learned focus on source within to such a degree that he did not get consumed by any of the human dramas. So when the human dramas came up to him, he just said, do you want to be free? And they could say yes or no. Crucifixion, first door to the right. Resurrection, first door to the left. And then he said, it is your faith that has made you whole. And then when he was suffering a lot and they were hurting him, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So even before the error was committed, or even before anybody said they were sorry, there was a centeredness in him and an inner peace that brought forth forgiveness. Jesus said, Thou canst have no power against me except it were given thee from above. Let's stand in that consciousness. Nothing and no one can interrupt the accomplishment of the divine life in me. Do you hear that?
Yes.
To know that so securely is truly the demonstration of a master teacher. And Jesus said, you will be master teachers. These things and greater than I have done shall you do. Anytime you come into the resurrection power of the living source of life, you're going to have to meet your old thought forms and let go of anything that limits you or that binds you to the illusions. So the only thing that must be sacrificed is your fear of being vulnerable, your lack of trust that the arms of God are holding you. These thoughts have been taught to us by people that would keep us small and keep us away from our true power. We teach that the love of God is everywhere present, everywhere, in everything. We try to see how through practicing this kind of Christ idea, this Christ consciousness, that we can be so immersed in the truth that we can walk in divine love and forgiveness constantly. We can be in the presence of guidance from within, always, with every move we make. Now this is the victory consciousness. This is the radical truth of Easter, that the Father, Mother, God, and you and I are one. Like Jesus was, we can be so immersed in that truth that we can walk like he walked, in unity consciousness. Do you hear me? I'm not fading out, am I? We can walk in the mystical truth that nothing can separate us from our worthiness, from the love that is our life energy. And through this consciousness, all things are possible. All things are possible. Reverend Jill Andrews, a Unitarian, said that the resurrection is not about consciousness. The resurrection, sorry, I'm saying it wrong. Phew! The resurrection is about consciousness. Yeah, that's it. It's not about what happened to Jesus. It is about consciousness. It's about what happened in Jesus. Don't you like that? You can go out and say that to your friends. It's not about what happened to him. It's about what happened in him. And it's about what's happening in us. That's the second resurrection. That is, I think, what Jesus talked about when he talked about the second resurrection. It's this conscious knowledge of the I am, this consciousness that's in me in spite of all appearances, that this second resurrection is working in me right now, every day, in every way. I hold that this body is lifted up and released from limitations of every kind. Can you say that with me? I hold that this body is now lifted up and released from limitations of every kind. I am resurrected from ignorance into understanding. I am resurrected from ignorance into understanding. The rising of God consciousness is in you. When the resurrection takes place, it's not about the next Messiah. It's not about one person who's going to get lifted up just to be torn down again. No. This Christ consciousness, this Buddha mind, is about the fact that the veil is being pierced on planet Earth and that the doors are opening between the realms of heaven and earth. The ethers are being penetrated. You can read about it in all the astrological forecasts that are going on. There is a vortex that is opening in which all things can be lifted up. This is what we're hearing about the ascension. So don't confine the resurrection power to your concept of its capacity. Don't confine it to any realms that you're typically thinking in. It's broader than we can conceive. There are fields in which the mind acts far beyond what we can now see. We know about quantum physics. We learn about the non-local mind. This is really a story about the Christ consciousness, the Buddha brain in action. So just let me give you a practical story about it, just to make it a little bit more nitty-gritty. Have you ever heard of Roger Bennett of the 4-Minute Mile? Raise your hand if you've heard about the 4-Minute Mile. So you know it. This was a truth, that in the human mind, people were told that no human could run faster than a mile in 4 minutes. But Roger, he was a really fast runner, and from the time he was little, he didn't believe in that limitation. He kept pressing up against it, and he finally pressed on through it, and that veil was parted, and the limitation of consciousness was ended. Yet the even greater part of the story is this. The moment he did it, there was a shattering and human limiting consciousness, and all these other humans all over the planet started running faster than the 4-minute mile too. Is this not the teaching of Easter? That any limit we think that is solid, that rock in front of the door, even death, that is not even a limit. Let me end with a prayer that Charles Fillmore said in 1914. Over a century ago, and take this into your own heart. Please know that you are here to bring these teachings to the next level of demonstration. Yes, it is you. You are the one. So come on, let's do it, he urges us. Let's lift up the I am consciousness inside of us. Say it over and over again. I am. I am. I am one. I am one with God. I am one with love. I am. Then everything in our lives gets lifted up. Everything in our lives shall be brought into the light. Levitate right now. Feel the power of the resurrection in your very cells. And know that you are in eternal light and love forever and ever. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. We are one. We are one. Let us enter this supreme consciousness, knowing that there is but one substance, one life, one intelligence. Know that all things are expressing this life, this light, love, substance, that all beings, and we too, are expressing it, and knowing it as the substance of our very life. right now, on this Easter morning, enter into the consciousness of this great life by holding silently in a sacred place, way down deep in your soul, this mysterious secret. Say to yourself, I know him, for I am him. I know him, for I am him, for he hath sent me. I know this great mind, for this great mind is in me, and this great mind hath sent me. I know life, for I am one with this great life. This great life has sent me here to do great things. And I know this tremendous light, for I am made of this light, and this light hath sent me into a great darkness. Commune with your great mind itself as it is communing with you, and have this confidence that you are worthy. You are worthy. You are one with this great love. You know where you come from. You know why you are sent here. And you know what you must do. On this Easter day, go forth and do it.